Ladies and gentlemen, any moment now, within the next 48 hours, we will be seeing the approval or the denial of the Bitcoin spot ETF. This is something that Bitcoin has been waiting for literally a decade, with the first ever spot ETF application back in 2013, 11 years ago. This is a big thing on Bitcoin, perhaps the biggest couple of days in Bitcoin's entire price history, not only from a charting perspective, but from a fundamental perspective as well. And a lot of people right now are caught up in emotions. I'm here to give you the facts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important video. You don't want to miss it. Let's get into it.
Now, I don't know what specifically would be in the list, but I would say that if this isn't one of the most important times in Bitcoin's lifespan, both from a TA and from a fundamental perspective, it's at least in the top 5. Okay, now, what I'm talking about, of course, as mentioned in the introduction, is the ETF decision. Now, as per this chart right here, and as per basically every single news article you will find about Bitcoin in the last 3 months, essentially, we have the final ETF deadline on the 10th of January for both ARK Invest and 21 shares. Now, this will be, if approved, the first ever spot Bitcoin ETF. Now, that's big. It's not just big, actually, it's huge, right? And we know for a fact now that the approval window, right, the period of time in which the SEC is going to be making a decision on ETFs is going to be between the 8th and the 10th of January. Guess what, guys? Today is the 8th. That means for any time in the next 2 days, we could be seeing a decision on Bitcoin spot ETFs, an approval or a denial. We should not be seeing another delay. This is the final deadline. It wouldn't be expected at all to see another delay. In fact, they've specifically said this is the final deadline. They're going to be approving or denying it by the 10th. So there's no real reason at all to expect another delay. It's actually not appropriate. It's actually not legal. So it's going to be an approval or denial, most likely, unless something ridiculously unpredictable happens in the next 2 days. And I know that people like to say, oh, unpredictable things happen all the time. It's going to be a delay, but there's actually no reason at all to believe that in this scenario. Now, we have seen ETF decisions in the past, okay? We've seen ETF deadlines come to an end, and we've seen denials on Bitcoin ETFs. In fact, if we go to Bitcoin's price history, let's go to the BLX here so we can get a full scope of Bitcoin's price history, moving all the way back into something like 2013, right? Believe it or not, 2013 was the first time we had an ETF application on Bitcoin all the way back here. The ETF ended up being declined, but it didn't have much of a result on price action at all, in fact, because I don't think many people cared about it at that point in time. We then saw more applications through 2015. 2018 was another big one. We saw an application for a Bitcoin spot ETF in 2018. It actually came in December 2017. That was when the application was made. Okay, so by that time, the bear market was already actually kicking in a little bit. But the application was made here. It was kicked back all the way to its final deadline. And finally, we saw the final deadline, similar to right now, on August 22nd, 2018, right? And you can see this spike upwards on this candle, August 22nd, this big wick up and down, right? From 6,000 all the way to 6,800, right? That's a candle that goes about 9%, bigger than most of the other candles in this price region. That was the candle that was the ETF denial. Now, look, you might be thinking, that's not that big of a candle. And it wasn't that big of a candle because the narrative about ETFs has never been stronger than it is now. We had another ETF, decision. I guess we had another ETF application through 2021, and it ended up being denied in November 2021, and we went down shortly after that. But at the same time, we have to understand that was the cyclical top, so we're going to go downwards anyways. The fact of the matter is, Bitcoin ETFs have not historically had much of an impact on Bitcoin's price action. So why do we believe it's different now? Well, firstly is personal experience, right? Anyone who's been around in the market cycle in 2018, maybe 2013. I personally wasn't here in 2013, but I was here in 2018, I was here in 2021, and I can tell you right now that Bitcoin spot ETFs were nowhere near as big of a deal as they are now. One of the things that has made this Bitcoin spot ETF a big deal is the size of the hedge funds that have been applying for them, okay? That's what's made it a big deal. BlackRock, okay? That's the big deal. BlackRock, Grayscale. Vanguard, these are the big deals here. These are why people are getting involved, not necessarily even Grayscale, but Vanguard and BlackRock, specifically BlackRock. That's why people care. Now, if you think about it, when did BlackRock apply for a spot ETF? Back here in July, okay? July over here. That's when interest in ETFs started hyping upwards. That's when we saw Bitcoin finish its final correction and move to the upside 87% without correction at all. That's when we saw the start of a move, right, on Bitcoin that not many people are discussing. Bitcoin has seen a move now. Let's go back to our post 2 weeks ago here. that has lasted 232 days, right? It's actually longer now. It's about 250 days because this post was made 2 weeks ago, right? Since we have seen, it's been 250 days since Bitcoin has seen a drawdown of 25% plus. The last time Bitcoin went this long without a drawdown of that side was 2011, okay? Again, let me say that one more time so people actually let that sink in a bit. Bitcoin has seen 250 days since a drawdown of 25% or more. The last time we went that long without a correction of 25% or more was 2011, before the first halving on Bitcoin, when Bitcoin was literally in its infancy, when Bitcoin's only purpose was drugs. That is the last time we saw this amount of price action without that significant of a correction. That gives you an idea of how major this ETF narrative has been on the Bitcoin price action, of how influential it has been. We have now seen as well, the amount of long-term holders. You look at a graph. Go ahead and type it up. Long-term holders graph Bitcoin. And just look at it spike to levels that you don't rarely see very often at all. People are not selling their Bitcoin right now. Right? Look at the profit margins of people who are holding Bitcoin. Check the on-chain data. Profit margins of people who are holding Bitcoin. Obscenely high for this part of the market cycle. Okay? Now, all of this is indicative of the reality. The reality is a narrative has been the driver of Bitcoin's price action. Look, I sound like a broken record. I've been saying this for months now. The Bitcoin ETF narrative has driven Bitcoin's price to the upside and enabled Bitcoin to not have corrections temporarily. That is the sole cause of this move, okay? So knowing that, knowing how high this move has gone on the back of ETFs, knowing how many corrections have been avoided, how many resistance zones we've just blasted through on the back of ETFs, right? People not willing to sell because the ETF decision is coming, constantly getting kicked back a month. They're not willing to sell because it's only ever a month away, even though it gets kicked back 4 months, That's the ETF decision. So we know that. So we know the ETF is huge. We know in the past it hasn't been huge. We know this time it's huge because of bigger hedge funds applying for ETFs and bigger potential funds flowing into Bitcoin. So why is the decision itself so big? Simple answer, right? If there is so much riding on this move, right? So many people convinced by the ETF narrative, so many people waiting for the ETF, more than ever. Of course, when it actually occurs, the result is going to be just as big. Okay? Now the question is that move going to be big to the upside or big to the downside? That's the question. Now, I did a poll 5 days ago. I said, will the ETF approval be bullish or bearish? 43% of people said it'd be bullish, and that was the biggest majority in the poll. I did a poll just a couple of hours ago here, right, with 240 votes. You can go ahead and vote in it right now. Most people expect the ETF to be approved, okay? And out of the people who expect it to be approved, about 3/4 think that it's going to be a pump on approval, okay? The fact of the matter is that most people are expecting an approval of ETFs, and most people are expecting that approval to lead to a significant pump to the upside. Now, here's the problem. ETFs are not destined to be approved, okay? It's not certain that they will be approved. That's the first issue. The first issue is they're simply not 100% guaranteed to be approved. They could be denied like they have been in the last 2 or 3 occasions, 2013, 2015, 2018, 2021. They could be denied like they've been 3 or 4 times now. But I will sit here and I will accept that the evidence does point to an approval, okay? BlackRock is a very reputable hedge fund in terms of application track history. They've only ever been rejected in an ETF 1 time in the entire history of BlackRock out of like 500 applications. So that alone is enough to believe that the ETF is going to be approved. We've also got hedge funds releasing advertisements publicly on cable TV. Various reasons to believe the ETF is going to be approved. I will accept that it's more likely than not that it will be approved, but I also will still say that it's not certain, so we can't treat it like a certainty. Okay? And second of all, and the more important point, this is the more important point. If we see an ETF approval, okay, which is probably more likely, actually it's definitely more likely, right? Not certain, but definitely more likely. That does not guarantee a pump on approval. Just because the ETF has driven price action, right? The rumor of the ETF, the speculation on the ETF has driven price action this high. That does not mean it will go higher when it's actually released. This is where we get into the term sell the news event. And it's a very real thing, and we really need to consider its possibility when it comes to ETFs. This is my final warning for you guys, right? I'm not sitting here saying anything. I'm not making any predictions because there's no predictions that can be made, okay? Let's make something very clear. Anyone who is making predictions about what Bitcoin is going to do over the next 2 days is completely lying to you. You cannot predict, okay, Bitcoin's movements in the next 2 days with TA, because TA is irrelevant when it comes to a decision like this in the market. And you certainly cannot predict what the pump or dump is going to be on Bitcoin, whether there's an ETF approval or not. You can't predict any of these things. You can say, I think this is likely, I think this is unlikely, but you can't actually have any degree of confidence in what you're saying. It's blank words. I will simply say this. Do not be so sure that this move, this ETF narrative, whatever it may be, this approval, denial, but let's say this. Do not be so sure that the approval of ETFs will lead to a pump, because that's not guaranteed at all. In fact, if you look at the data objectively, you can see that Bitcoin has been absolutely propelled to the upside relentlessly for months on end with no real correction. And if you look at that from an objective standpoint, you're probably more inclined to think it's going to be a sell the news event. Why? I'll tell you why. Right. ETF approval, the approval of the ETFs will not line up with the ETFs being publicly traded. Okay, so there's going to be no new funds flowing into Bitcoin on the instant of approval. That's not going to happen. The only people who are going to interact with the market when the ETF is approved, or if it's approved, are going to be retail investors. And retail investors are already aware of the ETF existence, and it's clearly been priced in to a certain extent, right? Also, another problem with thinking the ETF approval is going to lead to a pump, right? Or being certain about it, I should say, is the fact that most people in this market very much understand the broken record, repeated saying, the majority is always wrong. Okay? Now, the majority of people, as shown in my community polls, as shown in every poll you'll ever find on this matter on Twitter or YouTube, as shown in the price action itself going upwards, which means people are bullish, right? The majority clearly thinks that ETFs will be approved and ETF approvals will lead to a pump. That's what the majority thinks. So if you believe that the majority is always wrong, you should actually be expecting a sell the news event. Now, I don't necessarily believe in the saying the majority is always wrong, because I don't think it's easy to quantify the majority. I also don't believe that the majority of people is the majority of capital, and it's the majority of capital that moves the market. But I will say that it does add doubt to the whole idea that ETF approval is going to lead to a pump. I'm going to summarize this video, right? I don't want to go on for ages rambling about the same things over and over again. I just want to say these very simple things. Is the ETF likely to be approved? Yes. Is it certain to be approved? No. Is the ETF approval guaranteed to lead to a pump? Not at all. In fact, there's actually quite a lot of evidence, okay, circumstantial evidence to support the opposite. The sell the news event, okay, is a very real threat for this ETF decision. A pump is not guaranteed on approval of the ETFs. It very well could go the other way. I'm not making any claims because I don't have any evidence to make any claims, but I will say, based off logical analysis, it doesn't seem likely to me that a pump is what is most likely upon the ETF approval. But that's not a prediction, and I certainly won't be touching the market, right, around this approval deadline. I've already got my bags on Bitcoin. I'm not selling, I'm not buying, I'm not doing anything. You guys can do what you want. I'm just giving you the data, okay? The price has moved upwards massively without any correction for a long period of time. You need to be aware that an approval is not guaranteed to lead to a pump. That's not a prediction. That's just an observation of reality. So I hope you guys take that on board. I hope you guys consider it, because you really need to. There's a lot of people in the market right now who perhaps don't understand dynamics of fundamental events, perhaps don't understand how news events affect the market, and perhaps think just because something is approved, like an ETF, which we've been waiting for years on Bitcoin, that means it's going to be good in the immediate short term. The fact of the matter is, it is a very real possibility that this is priced in. It's a very real possibility that this whole move here was just the ETF approval, right? That was because of the ETF approval that most people are expecting. And then when it's actually approved, people won't have a reason to hold Bitcoin anymore, and they'll start selling into the corrections, and then Bitcoin would go down. That is a very real possibility, and you need to consider it. I'm not making any claims. I'm not making any predictions. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm just reminding you that you need to trust the data and don't let your greed or emotions get in the way. It's very unlikely, right? And let me say this. Unlikely is the wrong word. Let's just say this. There's no evidence whatsoever that this approval of ETFs will lead to Bitcoin breaking all-time highs over the next week, like a lot of people saying they are. There's no evidence of that. Nothing. So it's just gambling. Go to the casino. Guys, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Final warning, very big moment in Bitcoin's price history. Perhaps one of the biggest ever. Perhaps the biggest ever. We'll have to wait and see. But I think it's very major, and this is not a clickbait title or anything like that. Guys, thank you for watching. Check out the VIP group on Telegram. VIP, we trade altcoins multiple times a week. You can go ahead and make a payment there to get your 1 year, 6 month, or 3 month membership. We've got a 78.52% win rate. It's been absolutely exceptional. Our PDF of all of our trading results is available publicly there, fully transparent. Everything's there. Go ahead and check it out. We've then got the Bingx and Bitget exchanges. Both exchanges have never been hacked before. Both have extremely low trading fees. Bingx is global non-KYC. Bitget is global KYC minus the USA. Take your pick depending on your location. You're going to need a good exchange, guys. You're trusting this, you're trusting exchanges with basically a lot of your money, and you're paying a lot of fees to them. So get on a good one. These two are good ones, and I've handpicked them myself, and I can confirm that. So my referral links are down below. My referral links will give you further discounts on trading fees and further rewards from the reward center, up to 4,000 USD in rewards and up to 15% discount on trading fees. Go ahead and click the links below, sign up to these exchanges, help out the channel and help yourself. And then finally, the Crypto Academy Become a Trader course. This course will teach you everything you need to know about trading, everything you need to know about how to become a trader, hence the title, and also fundamental analysis, right? Not only TA, but also fundamentals. What is Bitcoin? What is the financial market? What is market psychology? How can you use it in your favor? Things like this that are going to really help you out that a lot of people and a lot of courses brush over, right? We cover all this stuff. It's literally everything you need. Check it out. The website's down below. The email address is there. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Good luck.